Hey guys, so Kobani here with the second part of the trim sheet video. In the last part we went through creating 3 of the shapes, and as you can see I finished it here, but right now it's being rendered in a very low resolution in order to save myself some memory here, because when I render it at 2K or 1K it slows down my computer due to me switching between so many nodes. But I think right now I'm at 250. Yeah, I'm at 256, but that doesn't matter. But I'm going to show you how I went through creating some of the shapes and how I combined all of them. So we are just going to quickly go through. In the last video I showed you guys how we created the vent, the octagon decal, which will be this one, and also I think the last one I showed in that one was would be, I think it's the, where is it? I forgot the name, sorry about that. I think it was the, no, yeah, I think it was this one. Yeah, there we go. So for this one, I'm just going to quickly go through the other ones I created, and I'll end the video with the combination. So let's just quickly. I'm doing this because it's faster this way instead of me creating it in real time, and it's going to be fairly quick because some of these shapes are very simple. Let's drag this down and let's begin. Okay, so for this one, for this screw, there's 3 different screws in one. So if I were to go to the output, one of the switches is on false and I put this on 0, I get this screw. And when I put both switches, this switch on false, I get this screw. And I'll show you how I created this switch system. It's not the most effective way to do so, but I just wanted a quick way. So for this one, you could start either by creating the screw itself or the screw, the shape. I mean the screw head or the shape indented into the screw head. So for this one, I just took 2 shapes, which one was a cylinder. I mean not a cylinder, but let me undock these ones just so you guys can see. So it's a sphere, and I just squished it on the x-axis. Took a rectangle, I mean a square, and squished it also on the x-axis, and then combined both with a blend, and I multiplied it. I went ahead and did the same here, but with the polygon, and I had it on 4 sides, and just did so here with the add. After that, I blurred a little bit for the edge detail and used a transform to rotate to 90 degrees and just blended it back into itself. There's an extra transform here. I think this transform was to scale it down, because it seems I scaled it down. Yeah, it might have been to scale it down a little bit. I don't know. Oh yeah, because the whole shape itself was too large. I just wanted to scale it down. So yeah, sorry, it's been a while since I created these ones. I use a levels. Now this is important because if the shapes are just black and white, black means absolute 0 and the white means absolute 1 in the height detail. In my opinion, you want some grays in there so that something can be higher than the shape. Because if this is white, to me this will be the highest point in the height map. So because I put it as gray, it allows it not to be the highest point. Else it gives the impression that it's cutting in. I would assume most people understand how height maps work with the grayscale value. So after that, I just blend the shape with the base screw head shape. Now with the screw head shape, you can go with multiple shapes. They all have the same principle. All you have to change is their base shape node. So for this shape node, I have a circle. I just took a disk and just scaled it down a little bit. I scaled it down a little bit because the bevel node kind of adds some size, some edge detail to it. So if it's too large already, it will cut into the tiling. And another thing I forgot to mention is that I make sure to turn off tiling on the shape nodes, so they don't tile throughout. Because shape like this, you don't put tiling either way. It will help you, especially when you're scaling stuff down. Because if tiling is on and you scale something down, you'll see it tile. So back to the shape, I just beveled it. I used the default bevel with some smoothness. Went through and added histogram scan so that I could get the base shape, because a histogram scan will bring back the shape itself. And you can also use it to tweak the shape size a little bit if you want. So as you can see, I can get some size differences. And this is the inputs I used. 0.5 gives you the exact same value as the parent node, and turning up the contrast to 1 will take away the grayscale values at the edges. And I blended it back in with as a multiply, so that it basically acts like a crease or a cutting off point. I use another levels on this just so that it is not absolute white. I mean absolute black, because I don't want it to be fully pushed back. And I brought it back here, but as you can see, I used this. I basically took the histogram scan, scaled it up a little bit, blurred it, just so that I could get rid of some aliasing that was on the edges. And then I blended it back to each other as a multiply. That's creating the little edge crease there. As you can see, this gray crease right here. So because this shape here is not absolute black, it means that it's not the absolute it's not on the base. So adding a little gray to it makes it rise from the surface. That's giving me the shape, the crease at the edge here. I hope I explained that better. And I just combine both shapes together. And in my opinion, if I were to go back to this one, it's not a big deal, but I will try and make this gray value lighter than this gray value, just so that they have two different height formation. But for this trim sheet, it's not that important because I'm not using any tessellation. So after I did that, I created the other screw head design, which is just another polygon, about 6 sides, and I rotated just a little bit, just so that I could have some. It's not a perfect rotation. You could leave it as a 0-degree rotation and actually rotate the UV when you are doing the UVs. And so it's basically the same thing. Like bevel it, use a histogram to get the shape back, and also the bevel rounds out the edges a little bit, which I wanted. So that's one reason I like using bevel over the blur sometimes. And blend it back into itself. But for this screw head, I didn't want to have a screw hole basically, so I had it basically some screws cover their screw holes, and I wanted the screw to be one of those ones, so I just made it cover a screw hole. Did the same thing here, and I use this I basically use the same indent here, and brought it back in. I rotated it just a little bit, just so that it's a little bit off the axis. And this screw head was more me being more fancy with it. So I basically took this is a great way of creating some cool curves. You take like a shape node, make it a paraboloid or a disc. I prefer paraboloid because with this design, the paraboloid is better since it already has a gradient in it. Although you gotta be careful because the gradient in paraboloid might have a plateau that you don't want. So you have to use the level sometimes to adjust it. But when you take that, I put it into a node called a Cartesian to polar grayscale, or Cartesian, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And what that does is, I fully don't understand it, but it gives me the shape. Yeah, I used the ones, realized they gave me the shape, and basically stuck with it. So yeah, and I took the same shape, transformed it, and just rotated it. I mean, flipped it, moved it a little bit, and blended them together. And I did that a couple of times so that I get the shape here, which it basically becomes like a fun shape. Use the levels to fix some of the how it was blending. Oh, so let me make sure I show you guys. for this one, you have to use a max lighting for the blend so that it blends nicely with the whites. Because max lighting brings out the whites in there. And if you don't use max lighting, if you use, let's say, add, you see it basically adds the whites onto themselves. That's making them more white. So max lighting just basically balances them out. And I do that over here too. And then I use the levels to basically get rid of some of the white here, because I wanted to get the shape smoother. And then I use a bevel to bring back the grayscale value a little bit. You could also use the histogram scan here to try and catch some shapes out, but for this shape I didn't think it was important, so I just added it back. I just took this screw head here and used it here too, and I used the histogram scan to cut it off just like usual over here. And so now we'll get into the switches. Now for this one, I have a bunch of switching going on so that in the final combination I could just duplicate the same tree and then use it. So well, the way I switched this was I took a switch node, which is basically the normal switch, and I put two of the shapes in there, which is this one, this screw head and this screw head. And in order to add the actually no, this one, in order to add the third one, actually, I'm sorry about that. Let me run that back. I combined these two screw heads here with a blend node set on copy, and I expose the opacity parameter, which basically means if it's on 1, the top one shows, the foreground shows, and if it's on 0, the background shows. So that's why you saw me switching with the slider, and then I combine those two into another switch, which will add the third one. If you want to make your life easier, you could basically create a switch for these two screw heads here. This designs for the indent, so this one and this one. But I wanted this screw to sometimes change, so that initially I wanted this screw here to also cover the hole. But basically there's multiple ways of switching, but I digress. So that with that, when you expose the parameters on the switch, what it leaves you is in the output node, you see, and make sure to name them so you remember. The way I named them here might not be best for sharing because people might not know. So, but since I knew I was the one using it, I kind of kept it that way. So exposing it makes you change it here. And I just input all of it into the normal and the height, and then the HB, the AO. For the AO, I went for a very simple AO. I just took an ambient occlusion node, just press spacebar, ambient occlusion. I type AO and I choose the second one. Put the height map in there, tweak the height depth a little bit. If you need more, you can add the levels. Just put it here. That was it. Let me go to another simple shape. The edges. But this one, what it will be used for is basically to fake baked edges on my shapes. So when I have a hard edge, I can use a stream to fake a baked edge. So they are very simple. I just took a shape node with a square, squished it on Y, and beveled it in 2 different ways, and basically just used a switch system. But the most important thing here is that when you are switching here, make sure that when you expose the parameter for one switch, also, oh, by the way, I use a histogram scan here to get a mask. Basically, you want to create a mask for all the shapes so that when you're combining them. But to create a mask node, just right click, create a new output node, not right click, but spacebar. Create a new output node, and when you click the add item, switch it to mask over here and name it accordingly, like mask, and make sure the group is material. You have to name it exactly that so that Substance knows how to group it. And I do that for all the shapes because this is important over here to make sure that all the nodes are being exposed right on the final sheet. So what I was talking about for the switch is that when you create one switch and you expose the parameter, duplicate that same switch. What that does is that anytime you switch it in the final output, it will switch it for all its duplicates. So that way you just one button does everything for you. And since this was only 2 shapes, it was fairly simple. I just exposed it that way. I'm sure another. Let me show you a fun shape I created. This one. This one's fairly fun to create, in my opinion. I don't think I showed it in part 1, so I'll just quickly go through this one too. I'll have a timestamp to skip to people who just want to see the combination. So for this one, for a triangle, I just took a polygon node, switched it to 3 sides. If I switch it to 4 sides, you can see I get something like this. Which, if I want to get rid of the blending here, just have to come here and switch it from add to max lighting. That'll give me this nice shape here. And if I switch it back to 3, I can even keep it on max lighting and do that, but that's not what I care for right now. But basically, let's see if I put it on 5. You can get some cool shapes here like this, but I digress. Okay, so for this one, I created one polygon node, bevel there. You can do the bevel before or after, but I chose to do it before when I have only one shape. And I transformed it. Now this transform is very important. What you have to do with this transform is basically I scaled it down, and then I offset it over here. So what you see here is that this offset on X, I make sure I offset it by 1 here, and on Y over here I went barely a little bit, but because I was using a transform node to flip, I use the same transform node to flip this triangle, it will not be in the same position. So that's why you see it on the y-axis was moved a little bit -2 to make sure it lines up a little bit more. I could even line it up better just to get a shape to work. And over here, the X has to be on 0.5. So when you offset 1 by 1, I mean you offset one shape by 1, you offset the other by 0.5, and that will give you what you want. Because if I offset this by 1, they'll basically be in the same place. So I basically just did a half of the initial one. So if I put this on 1, I'll have to put this on 2. Oh wait, actually it has to be negative because they're both moving in the positive value. But I hope you guys understand what I mean. If you don't understand, you can just keep like offsetting on the X value to see. But this is how I did it. Basically, this is the input numbers I used. I flipped it on the horizontal with the horizontal mirror button here, and then basically did so. And I kept tiling on for this one because I didn't mind the tiling. But I switched it to only horizontal tiling, which I think I did here. Where did I switch it to horizontal tiling? Actually, when I think about it, it didn't matter for this shape. Oh yeah, because I did it in the beginning. When you do it for the parents, basically it keeps it for all the children. So I switched the tiling to horizontal tilings because I wanted it to only tile horizontally, so that when you do your transforms, you don't see any other triangles pop up. So basically, I blended them together with the max lighting or an add. For this one, an add will work since nothing is overlapping. But if things are overlapping, then use a max lighting. I added an edge detect node, which basically I tweaked a little bit, used the levels to get rid of some blur, to add some blurriness into the edges. Well, actually, this was a blur, sorry, not a levels blur. And then I brought them together just to give it a little bit of a bevel. I could have used a bevel node, but sometimes I just switch between. For the other one, I just basically went to the square shape, transformed it a little bit so that it lines up with the shape here, because this shape is not perfectly in the middle. And I use an edge detect, gave me these lines here, inverted the grayscale and blurred it and added it on top. And I use this square here to basically create a mask, and I use that mask as my mask output. Basically, you can duplicate the same output and paste it into the other channel, so you have to keep on creating the output. You have to make sure this mask output covers the whole shape approximately, so that it will be important when you're combining your shapes. And I blended them together. I mean, I created the AO, and I just put everything here. Basically, for the AO, I could also, I could do this for the AO. And create a mask like this. So that way that the AO doesn't bleed into any other AO in the combination. But I basically I worked around it. You could do it here, or you could do it when you get here into the sheet itself. So I chose to do it in the sheet itself. But it all comes down to preferences. You can also do that for the normal, so that the normal doesn't bleed into the other one. Basically, you do it for AO and normal. That's one thing I have to point out. Since for the height, I already did it here. You have to do it in for the AO and the normal. I think that was it. Oh, screw line. Okay. Screw line was basically, I took a bevel node. I'm trying to keep this video fairly short, so, but I don't want to miss any information, so please bear with me. So for this one, I took a bevel node, and it seems I kept one extra node here because I worked with a couple of bevels first. So if you take a gradient, a linear gradient. If you take a linear gradient and you use a curve, basically you can use this curve to create some cool shapes and just see what you like. Like if I rotate this curve in multiple ways, you can see how I'm getting like different cuts with the gradients and stuff. I can move, like you can even add more dots and get some different shapes. But I went for a fairly simple one. Okay, now for a fairly simple one, and let me position this right so it's easier to visualize. And I basically put it into, I used it as a bevel for this shape right here. So when you're beveling, I took this shape, scratched it a little bit, and when you're beveling, you can turn this, use custom curve as the bevel. You can turn it to true, and then you can use a custom curve or a levels with a gradient inserted. And now when I use this bevel node, it will work differently. So it will respect the curve node or the levels that you connected to. I use the levels to push it back a little bit because I didn't want this to be the highest point. The highest point being these knobs in here. I just call this screw line just to remind myself. For this one, I basically went for a very easy way, which I took a shape, made a paraboloid, used the curve to get the outer cut and the illusion of it going into something. Created a mask out of it, and also used a levels node to basically push back the white a little bit, because if you do it on default, this part will be a plateau to be very flat. So I just put this as a foreground and use the mask to cut out the shape and just added them together and left it on copy. But because since I'm using a mask, it will respect the mask, so there's no need of switching the blending mode here. And basically save transformed it. This is very important. I use a transform node. I use save transform. They both act differently. Save transform basically respects tiling, so you can basically use the tiling as a transformation. And I set it to only horizontal tiling, so it got rid of the vertical ones. And I just created a mask out of this by using the histogram system. By this time I just put it in position on 1. And just blended it in back to itself as the height mask, but I use the mask to cut it out, so the height mask has the height map has a mask on it. Created an AO the similar way here. In my opinion, I'll say it's cleaner to cut the AO here by using this same system where you blend and use a mask. so that you don't have to do it in the final. I should have done that too, but I guess I might have forgotten. I would advise you do it for the normal here too, so that you save yourself a lot of trouble when you get into the final. I think the final shape is fancy squares, which I call it. Forgive my naming system. Oh, this one. I remember this. That's why I call it fancy square. But I just took a square node, a square shape from polygon or square itself, or the shape node itself. Use a transform to rotate it, and you subtracted it. Like this is a shape node, and then I just used it as a subtract and cut it. You can move it multiple ways to get different shapes. I use an edge detect to get some roundness on the edge and use that as a mask just to get some roundness on the edge itself, because over here it'll be like 90 degrees, but if I do it here, you can see it has a little like curvature on it. I use a transform node to stretch it out a little bit because it was too much of a square. And then I just used the gradient system with a curve, moved it around to get some fancy shape, blended it. Use that as a bevel, blend it a little bit just to get rid of some little like edge problems I was seeing. Created a mask out of this one by inverting the grayscale and basically blurring that with the beveling that with the curve system again, but that goes into another shape. So basically, just to stick with this shape up here, I blend it, use the levels to get rid of the absolute black, just so I could get a good height map out of it. And as you can see, for the height map, I used a histogram scan and blended it in here to cover the black hole in there. Then I just use that as a mask. But for the final level itself, I use the mask so that I could cut off the grays outside of this shape right here, because I want the shape to be cutting in, and so I didn't want it to just be all the same level. So after I do that, I just have it with a switch node, because I'm switching between two nodes here. For this one, the simpler one without the outer trim, which let me just switch so I can show you. It's just this one. So for this one, all I did was I took the node from here and used the curve system differently. And I inverted the grayscale so that it cuts in and doesn't cut out. And just used a bevel, inverted the grayscale again, but this grayscale inverting was to get a mask out of it, because I wanted the mask has to be white on the part that you want to actually show. So for that I used that invert grayscale, which gives me this value because I cut it from here. And then I went ahead and just used a histogram scan. I cut it from here because sometimes when you bevel, as I said, it adds a little bit of a edge thickness to it. Because if I cut it from here, this shape will be smaller than this. And I just basically put them onto a white square. The reason I put them onto a white square was because, as I said, I want them to be cutting in. If I leave them on a black background, they'll be cutting out. So using that white square, I used it to cut out my shapes here. And I put this as the mask. And actually, speaking of which, I think I switched the mask to this shape here. Yeah, I think I switched the mask here. I might not have saved it. Let me check. But I'll check when I get to the final. But yeah, I think that was the speed walkthrough of the shapes I created. And I've created fairly simple shapes. These are not complicated stuff, so I think anybody can create them. So let's get into the combination. Don't think I missed anything here. Oh, cylindrical hole. Cylindrical hole is actually fairly simple. I took the same system I used on the other one when creating the octagon. The screw. I took a shape, took a sphere, basically made it smaller, and then I cut it out with the square shape that is being squished. That way I could keep going. I mean, I could get it to cut in. And I did what I basically did for the fancy square. Use the curve system, histogram scan to get a mask, and did all the shaping and put it on a white square in the end. And got my shape here. But for this one, as you can see, I kind of wanted it to have a little edge and some space around it so that it's easier to when I'm doing it on UV. Now this white square thing here, you don't have to do it if everything on your trim sheet is cutting into the shape. That will mean, because the reason I had to do the white square is because some of my shapes are not cutting into, they're cutting out. I mean, they are rising out of the height. So I had to basically tell the height map that this part should not be cutting into the shape. But that's if you create a height map, a trim sheet specifically for something. But this trim sheet I was having fun with, so I kind of combined multiple shapes. I mean, multiple height values. So for this one, I'm going to, let's switch it to 2K so that you guys can see the detail. So there should be a, oh yeah, trying to come on. Yeah, times 2. I think that's 512. Let me check. Yeah, that's 512. Oh, I didn't put 1 to 2. Sorry. There we go. That should be 1K. This is in rendered at 1K. That is. There's something I have to fix here actually before I go back. So for the combination, I'm not going to repeat myself for this one because everything is basically a repetition here. So for the combination, I'll use these first 2 shapes as an example. You basically take the material from here, like you create a new graph, take the material from here and just drag it in. Oops, just drag it in and to create this for you. I'm going to delete it. And what you do is I take a node. Basically, remember the thing I talked about with a mask for the AO and the normal? You can do it here, or as I said, you could do it in the shapes itself, so you don't have to, you save yourself time here. So in my opinion, I'll say do it in the shapes themselves, because when I came here, I had to keep doing it and it kind of got annoying because I didn't think I'd add so many shapes initially, so that was on me. So after you cut them off, you mask out the AOs and the normal so that they don't bleed. You take a node called material transform, which basically can create. Where is it? Right here, material transform. And I would advise you go to the channels and turn off some of the channels you'll not be using, which is like diffuse, base color, normal, and all that stuff. You could keep some of them if you created your trim sheet to use them, because some people create trim sheets with different materials sometimes. But one node that you have to activate is the opacity. Basically, what I called a mask is basically being used as an opacity here. You could save it. You could basically change this node here from mask to opacity so that it exports as an opacity. But I basically kept it as a mask. But in the future, I might switch it to opacity. The reason I might switch it to opacity in the future is because if you come here, the easiest way to connect these nodes, because there's so many nodes you have to connect and it can get very tedious. Easiest way to connect them is basically if I create, let's say I had this, right? The easiest way is you press 3 on your keyboard. It basically goes into compact mode and it allows you to drag everything. And when I press 1 again, you see that Substance basically connected every node to where they're supposed to go. But the mask won't go anywhere because it's reading it as a mask and not opacity. And I didn't even have opacity on. So if you had this as an opacity and then you did a compact mode drag, Substance will read it as an opacity and it will connect it for you. But yeah. So with a material transform, I basically have the node here and it works like a transform tool where you just use it and move it around. And then I blended 2 materials together. Sorry. I did it for 2 materials each. So that's because the material blend node, which is this node right here, which you can also find the material blend node only allows for two materials to be combined. I've not found a way to combine more than one. And one important thing about the material blend node is that you have to turn off the stuff you don't need first. And when you come to the stuff you need, switch their blending modes from normal to add. The reason I say switch it, because if you leave it on the normal, stuff like normal, stuff like the normal maps may blend differently, which will be something like this. Like, oh no, the normal map you can't actually change, but the ambient occlusion, for instance, if I leave it on normal, oh, you can't even see. But as you can see, it turns black because it's blending the darkness, like the black parts of this ambient occlusion, with the one here. So let me switch it back to add. So basically, putting them on add makes both of them have their respected shape, their shapes respected. I don't know if I explained that properly, but yeah. Sorry. So after I do so, I basically, what I do is that I blend both of them here. Reason I blended them here is just so that I don't have to keep on moving them separately. And as you can see, I only blended I did this blend here. Actually, wait, was this a blend? Oh yeah, actually ignore that. This blend here was because initially I didn't do the mask back here. So I think if I delete this blend, there should be no change here. Oops, because I did it. Just because initially I didn't do the ambient occlusion cutting back here. So, but when I created the other notes, I realized I should just do it at the beginning, so I don't have to keep on doing them. So yeah, that blend dies over here because of that. So after I blend two materials together, I basically, as you can see, I transformed them. I scaled them down a little bit and placed them where I want them to be. So yeah, it comes down to basically previewing, then like right click on the node and say view in 3D view, and then go back to your transforms and then basically click on them once. So you'll be moving in and then looking at them in the real time, and then just keep moving until you get shapes where you want them to be. And I just repeated the blending system for everything. Like I combined two materials multiple times. For the shapes that had the parents, the switches in them, when you click on the shape, it shows you the parameters. So it just showed me the parameters I exposed. So I duplicated them and switch their parameters. So something like this. You can also do so for the other ones. Duplicate and switch and do the respective parameter changes that you need. And I just blended them multiple times. And just kept blending. It will take a lot of blending here due to the fact that I add so many shapes. And just transforming them. One important thing is that if something tiles horizontally, go to the transform node, which is here, and switch it to no tiling. Actually, I do it for every transform node so that when you scale down, it doesn't tile. If you do it here, it won't respect it. You have to do it in their transform node. Or at least that's the problem I run into. So basically, make sure you make it not tile. Also, when you scale down, you see a tiling. And for this shape right here, I made a mistake, which will be the octagonal shape. Where you are? Where are you? This one, yeah. So this one I messed up. As you can see, when I was doing the tiling, I made it this way so that it tiles nicely. Like if I press space bar here, it tiles nicely. But when I was scaling it down, since I scaled it down in such a weird way, it changed the tiling system. That's causing it to be a double shape here at the edge. So just to show you the difference, this one tiles nicely, like how the shape is supposed to tile, and this one has a double loop here. So when you're scaling down, in my opinion, you gotta be careful, or else you get this problem here like I did for some shapes. It won't happen to everything, but it will happen to some shapes. So I'm going to fix that right now. But let's see, do I have this node? Okay, I don't have it. I used to have a floating transform node, so I don't have to keep on redoing everything. Transform. So I'm just going to do that here, material transform. Okay. Turn off stuff. Turn on this one. Okay. I'm going to press compact mode. Drag it in. I connect everything and I add the mask. Let's do this so I can see. And now I want the shape to be exact. Like what the mistake I made was that I scaled it down so that it doesn't cover the shapes that were there. So let's shift drag these nodes into their respective places. So because I scaled it down, it basically told it to. I didn't want to cover some of the shapes here because this shape itself is too large. So in order to scale it properly, I was supposed to use this button right here, which is the divide by 2 here. So before that, let me turn off tiling. Absolute. No tiling. Oh wait, oops, horizontal tiling. For these ones, put it on horizontal tiling. So that way now it tiles properly. What I did here was I used Control Shift to scale down. And when you do so, you'll not be perfect. Like you might get a shape the size you want, but you won't get the perfect size of the scale. So by dividing by 2, you get a nice. It basically tiles it perfectly for you. So I recommend doing that over using the manual transformation. And also another way of doing so would be to. Actually, yeah, I think that's the best way. For this one, it's still a little bit too large. As you can see, it's covering some of the other shapes still. So if I were to scale this one down, this is where I want it to be. So I'll just scale it down one more time. And I don't mind it being so much right now. It might be a problem in the future, it being so much, because the UV scale will come to play, but it doesn't matter. So this is how I wanted it to be, and then basically that's safe enough to me. But since I've done this, I have to go back and change it for some stuff in the future, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, after you blend everything, let's view. Oh, and one more important thing. After you blend everything into one node, into one final output, which is all the way down here. One thing I did was, for my normal map, wait, why did everything push back? For my normal map, I didn't use the blends, the normal blend here. Reason being, if you use this as your normal map, due to us blending them, I had to blend them at point. Let's go back to the material. For the material blends, in order for both of the normal maps to show, I had to put them at 0.5 so that they both show. Because if you put it at 1, it makes one normal map overtake the other one. So I put them at 0.5 so that both normals show. And as you can see, they lose some of their height depth. So in order to get control back for their normal intensity, I basically, after all the heights were combined, I use this height and just connect it to a normal Sobel, or you can use the default normal. I just use Sobel because Sobel is a little bit cleaner but more expensive. But for this node right here, I didn't mind. So I just use normal Sobel and tweak back up the intensity, so all the intensities are tweaked up equally, and that way I connected it to the PBR based material, which is basically similar to the other ones. PBR based material is just a good way of organizing your input system. And I did so the same thing for this one, and which will be the ambient occlusion, I think. Yeah. The reason I did so for the ambient occlusion is because we are using the mask system here, we get a lot of blacks here, which doesn't matter. But in blacking, the ambient occlusion just means it will be very dark and it will receive no lighting. So I just wanted to bring back the white in it, and I use an ambient occlusion with a uniform color, and then I just used this opacity as a mask, just so that the reason I do so is because I want to keep the dark values in there, and that way every shape kept their own ambient occlusion, and I use that as my ambient occlusion output. And for this trim sheet, all I needed was the height, normal and ambient. And I use PBR based material just so I can get a free base material here, a base color I mean, a roughness value here. And I made it dielectric because none of the shapes here I want them to be metal. Because I want to create everything else. I mean, if they'll be metal, I'll create that in the material itself that I'll be using for the shape. So yeah, this is the combination, and I don't know how long this video is right now, but hopefully it's roughly an hour. I think the next part, what I'll do is I'll show you how I'll be using this this trim sheet in my work, in case somebody doesn't understand how that I plan on using the trim sheet. So I'll see you guys in a few. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys one way you could use the trim sheets. There's multiple ways. One way is to use it with floating geometry and have the floating geometry UV to focus on the trim sheets. But for this one, I'll be using the trim sheets by UVing faces. So basically, let's say you have this shape, and open my UV editor. I create 3 UV sets, and I'm using this in Unreal. I don't know how you would use it in Unity. Maybe a similar concept but different execution. The first UV set I usually keep to my tiling material UV set. Light maps for my second one. I've not created light maps for this one, so obviously this is just auto. This is the UV, and for the final one I have the trim. And in Maya, the issue with Maya is that you can't preview a UV set. I mean, you can't preview the texture as on the UV set. So right now, even though this is how it's UV, you can see the texture is not showing the same way. So usually I work around this by working on the trim here in the map 1 and then copying it from here into a different UV set, and then I go back and create the actual UVs. But another way of fixing that problem is by going to the Windows, Relationship Editors, and I think it's UV Lincoln and UV Centric. There we go. But I put it on, I docked it up here just so that I can click it. And basically I just click on trim and I click on whatever shape I want it to be. So when it's highlighted, it's connected. So so this is how my trim is actually looking right now. So basically in Maya, Unity, in Unreal, when I create a material, I'll basically create a texture coordinate and tell it to only look at the second UV set, which in Unreal will be UV set 2, because Unreal starts from 0 and 1 is the light map and 2 will be this one. And as you can see, the parts that I don't want to be affected by the trim, I've scaled them down, and the part that I want it to be affected, I've scaled it to fit. So let's say if I go to face, this is this one, and actually this shape should be here too. Oh, it seems I mistakenly messed it up, because this shape and this shape were both on here. I think I might have mistakenly UV'd it and forgot to click on the shape, but at least I see it now. And as you can see, this one, tiling texture density doesn't matter when you're using trim sheets, because the thing that will be going for the tiling material is the first UV set. This one, you just want the normal map information from them. So as you can see, for this shape, I've scaled it down just so that it fits this and gives the illusion that I'm actually using this. So I hope that helped with the trim sheet system, and I clarified anything I could clarify. And if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments, and I'll be reading them either way. If you have any feedback, also please feel free to leave it. And thank you for watching, and just have a great one.